Hello?
Hi, can you turn off the recording? It's recording already.
No, it doesn't start until you start the broadcast.
Okay. Just gonna pull it up. We have 5 people. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. Just pulling up the latest.
Okay, so when you're ready, just start the broadcast and pull the presentation up.
Yeah, just doing that. Gosh, I thought you sent it, finalists. Where's the final one? Did you email it or is it, yeah,
You got it?
I got it. It says 3.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it takes me forever to log in. I need to have a better way of logging in. Maybe put a link. Okay, let's get started. Sorry, we're 5 minutes late. That sucks. Let me start 1, 2, 3. Good morning and good day, everybody. Thank you for joining our first in a series of webinars for 2020. Hope the new year is safe and full of success for everyone. So today's topic is around risk management using SafePath predictive analytics, also known as advanced analytics. It's a new year and we're thinking about the trends in the market. There's some exciting areas that we have adopted, working busy last year, in terms of latest technologies that help you identify risk, improve your bottom line. So we'd like to share that. There's more details available in our newsletter that'll be going out in the next few days, and you can check that on our website. So yeah, we're really excited about this new year, especially the year being 2020. Of course, we got to talk about insight, right? So this presentation is really about helping you identify risk and predict it before it becomes materializes, basically, right? And if you think about our history, over the last 10 plus years, I've been involved with helping customers identify access risks and predicting, in terms of policy violations that can potentially lead to financial risk. And we have since then done a lot of work on our platform to really build that predictive capability in the tool. And so now with machine learning and AI and our ability to perform large amounts of data very quickly with our upgrades and so forth, we can now identify and detect risk even faster and help you improve your business. So that's sort of the theme of today's presentation. Put together a quick agenda. A very brief introduction. Most of you hopefully know us, so read more about us on our website, especially the resource page where these webinars go is very useful. So please take a look at that. I have Emma, our marketing manager, on the phone as well. So Emma, if we can post this out there like you always do, that'd be great.
Yep, sure.
And at the end, Emma will close out with some next steps. Also, if you have any questions, please post those in the chat box. We'll take those towards the end of the meeting today, and we'll open it up for questions at the end, and we'll read those out. Okay, so the agenda is, like I said, you probably read it by now. So basically, we wanted to, the headline is too much data, not enough analytics, and that's a sort of a theme that we have heard for the last few years from our customers. We've all been hearing buzzwords like big data and analytics and so forth. So what does that mean to our customers and folks that run finance organizations and enterprise, responsible for the enterprise and large IT organizations? So that's kind of where the vision comes in, right? Like what should be the vision? What should be the new thing for 2020, right? And then talk a little bit about how SafePath can assist you with your vision, help you build out a roadmap. If you already have a roadmap, where does SafePath fit into that roadmap, which milestone and so forth. And ultimately, as always, we like to talk about a real world story, which is the main reason for joining these things, because our goal is to bring insight from the real world to you on lessons we have learned. So great time to get started on insight, safe insight, and I'll talk about that in a brief minute. A little bit about this year. As I mentioned, the newsletter is a great source to learn more about us and then follow up with us if you have any area of interest through our LinkedIn and other contact portals. Again, one of the things that we're doing this year, as always, is going out, meeting our customers at various events throughout the areas where we serve the market. US obviously being our biggest, but also Europe, Middle East, Africa, and so forth. You'll see us there through various events. And if you just like to join us online, this is the best forum for us to communicate. And we're doing more and more of that online through our user groups, and you'll see more activity there as our team grows and they're more involved in helping. So our insight and our knowledge that we share with you comes with all the respect to our customer base, 200 plus positive, that has really taught us what we know. The problems we have heard from our customers really is the value of SafePass. And so that's what we create, is take that knowledge that we have learned in the market, apply that technology to it and solve problems. And so we're really honored to have some of the top companies across all major regions, geographic regions and industry regions in the world have honored us to be part of their organization. So we're really excited about that. And then just a little bit about, let me just kind of level set the issue, right? So you've all, I'm sure you're on this webinar, you've heard about this topic through other sources. So what is, from our perspective, what are we seeing? So I thought I'd start with some basic numbers, right? Why the current process doesn't work? Why are people struggling with data? And this is based on research that's done by, as you can see at the bottom, my resources are IDC, HBR, and so forth. So you can see that this is accredited and independent review. And I think it's intuitive also, right? So for example, 37% of analysts say that analyst time is spent on just searching for data, and I'm guilty of that myself, right? When I'm putting together a report, for example, our KPI reports for our internal management planning, I go through many different systems. I go through Salesforce, I go through our accounting systems, I go through our product management and support management systems. So data is everywhere, and to make sense of it and get good business insight, you have to bring that together. And that's a lot of time lost if you think about it. And if we can do anything to help improve that, we're here to do that. And that's what we're doing ourselves internally, right? And then as the second point to the right, in the top right coordinate, you'll see that 60% of the analysts also spend looking for data in 5 or more places. And I'm one of them, frankly. I'm a victim of this. So the solution is really for us and for our customers, because we just can't rely on, our data is everywhere, right? So we can't rely on a single data source and close our eyes and think that we got all the results we need. You have to validate, you have to verify, and so forth. So you need multiple sources. And our customers, I see the same thing, right? You've got an ERP system, you've got a CRM system, you've got many operational systems, HR, and they may even be in the same. Some of them may even be in a single platform, but even that platform is split out in many cases, whether using SAP, Oracle, etc. There is transformation projects out there that I'm talking to customers where some things are in cloud, some things are on premise. There are various data protection policies that restrict you from data being everywhere. So you've got to look at those data sources. And then as a result of that, the most shocking number, of course, is that 60 billion, right, with a B, is spent on manual modeling. And what that means is basically extracting data from all these sources, identifying those data sources, the elements, the objects, as we call it here at SafePass, and then basically collating them into something useful of a model that you can monitor, whether it's the performance of a process or financial statements, etc. Be able to model that month after month as part of your period end process or a daily process if possible, which as you can see is very costly. 13% is of the solutions that even make through all these hurdles don't make it out and to get deployed. And that's again, to me, makes sense because if you're going to spend that kind of money and the complexity, the reliability on the data and the need to maintain it with human intervention is too high. So someone leaves the organization, they get job changes, and one weakest link breaks in your data chain. And as a result of that, you lost the insight. So that's that's how it sums up the challenge for the market and for certainly for our customers in brief what they're telling us. So what are the challenges? Let's drill in a little bit more. I found this, I was Googling it something and I found this and credit that. So it says instead of budgeting to our strategy, you can read this, to our strategies, our time is basically spent linking those correct cells in the spreadsheets and formulas. And that's true, 90% of the spreadsheets have some functional errors, right? So it's challenging, and here you are, getting in front of the board or executives or your team and explaining how you're going to perform a certain process and execute certain strategy, and your numbers don't add up. It's pretty embarrassing. And so what happened is, let's look at some of the root causes. What are the challenges? Why is it so hard to get it all done in spreadsheets? It's basically a spreadsheet hell, right? I mean, you're basically extracting data from various data sources, putting them into pivot tables, building these nice graphs, but one cell changes and then you got to redo everything. So it's a circular loop. Many teams spend time building custom solutions. So you then graduate from the spreadsheet into, let's say, putting things in a database. You put maybe an Access database, a more sophisticated database, or a BI tool. And now you've got, some challenges in extraction capabilities, right? So you're as good as your ability to extract that data in a timely manner, merge it, basically perform that ETL. Many times it's manually done. And so as a result of that, the last challenge, the bottom line challenge, is about the source of truth. We are as financial executives paid to ensure the accuracy and correctness of financial results that are being reported to management, audit firms, etc. So being able to rely on that is critical. So what invariably happens is you got to tick and tie all the data that you've extracted from source systems back to those source systems, and by the time you do that, it's not a single form of truth anymore. So a big challenge, and therefore we're in this spreadsheet hell, as we say here. So from there, you get a little more sophisticated. You go to this, basically you call yourself big data. You start looking at SQL queries against your data sources or some, star schema and so forth if you're using data warehouse. And now you're IT dependent, right? You got specialized skills that you're taking away from servicing your customers and your employees and your partners to basically dedicating those resources to reorganizing the data you already have. And they're doing that a significant portion of their time. So let's say 30 or 40% of your budget, if you think about it, is being spent on reporting, which is what I've heard from our clients, right? And you can look at your own organization to create a business case. I mean, the purpose of today's session is to help you create a business case for a better way of analyzing this problem, solving them. So yeah, and so the manual search is then labor intensive. I think pretty obvious, very time consuming. It's a sampling approach, because as soon as you take that sample, something changes. So a month later, if you were making decisions based on that sample, that may not be correct sample, and someone else may have a different version of that same sample. In other words, a different set of facts or truths, which will create conflict as well. I've been in an organization where two silos are fighting each other because they have different sets of truths that they have made their conclusions of, right? So it creates that friction in the organization, slows down the process and performance. And lack of, response times. The last point is pretty critical here too, is no alerts, monitoring, or point in time. So you do all this extraction, you put it out there into a BI tool, and get these nice dashboards, but people maybe forget, they're busy, they don't look at them, and now critical factors change, like you've run out of a key chemical in your product manufacturing, process manufacturing, whether you're delivering food or other items, like think of a customer that has provides a chemical industry that provide finished goods for large organizations to clean large buildings, and if one of the elements runs out in the recipe, they can't recognize any revenue because they can't push the product out. So that's just an example that comes to my mind. And again, we can advance from there to more advanced scripting languages. For example, ACL is a tool most of our, I grew up with audit and so forth, so auditors have used that for many years, and continues to be a good point solution. And you'll see a little bit later in the presentation how we can take some of the work you've already done, leverage that, and pull that into SafePass to help you create better insight and make it more of an automated, streamlined process. So again, ACL scripts are another way of extracting and analyzing data into spreadsheets. And technologies, of course, legacy has been around for 20 plus years. So it's time in 2020 to look at what's available and modernize your business as companies move to a digital platform, right? So in a nutshell, what happens when we have all these challenges with data and analyzing that information in spreadsheets? The question becomes for the strategic folks, as this group has identified, where are you spending your time as an organization? Are you focusing on outdated tools and they're keeping you from achieving those strategic objectives or not? And so this was a study done that shows, the breakdown in our system. So on the left, you can read this is likelihood of occurrence and executive time spent. So 86% is something have to do with strategic risk. The likelihood of that causing an impact on your business is very high, but you're only able to spend 6% of the time there. On the bottom, you'll see that on financial reporting, you're spending 39% of your time, whereas the risk is only 2%. So because the data is overwhelming and is growing and there are many data sources, you end up staying at the bottom of this pyramid in terms of risk categories. And you miss out on operational risk and strategic risk, which is where you squeeze your, your competition, you increase your value, equity, and so forth in your enterprise. And that's not happening because you're too busy solving spreadsheet problems. And so the companies have to step out, and this is a great year to do that. Okay, so what we help you do is basically streamline the process, make it more automated, standardized, and there are many different ways of achieving that depending on your pain points. So we'll cover a few of those examples today. And ultimately, what we hope to accomplish is give you a way to, freeing up your resources to address strategic issues. And that's where you can create new opportunities for your organization, right? So what are some of the roadmaps and vision that we are hearing for the enterprise in 2020? And so let's take a look at some information here. So sorry about a lot of text here, but I wanted to just lay things out because there's a lot of noise and confusion about what analytics means. So I wanted to get some bases right using terms that we can all get on the same page with. So what is data analytics? What is predictive analytics? So I wanted to just define that. And this is what the analysts has consensus around these areas that I've identified. So predictive analytics is basically a category of analytics, right? No surprise there. And then basically it helps you predict the future outcomes based on your historical data, analytics techniques, and so forth. It's typically based on statistical analysis. We also call it data sciences or machine learning. The science of predictive analytics can generate future insights, right? And that's what's so important to us for our customers, that they should be able to get a better foresight, because historically we have built, by we I mean IT market and vendors have created products that are really about looking in the rear view mirror, and we've been blamed for that, right? That yeah, I can look at the aging reports, very helpful, but it tells me what happened 90 days ago. It's a mirror that sees in the past. What customers have always demanded is, well, what I'd like to be able to do is look at the future better so I can make better decisions. And that's what data science does in terms of predictive analytics. And that's where SafeSight is built for, is to protect you against future risks, as well as other products that we have which protect you against current and past risks. And if you can look at the trends, you can get there. So the way predictive analytics works, it looks at current data and looks at the trend in behaviors over days, years, or milliseconds, and uses that information to predict future results. So I think a very common implementation of this is Wall Street, where predictive analytics helps you make decisions about stock purchases based on news, current news, future trends, and so forth, where we have trading happening through machines using predictive analytics. Organization can exploit patterns, right? So you can see a pattern of risk and opportunity in your own business model. So it's very contextual, right? And which is where SafePath shines. I mean, we build our technology on very contextual, granular understanding of your objects that make up your business processes. So modeling is very important, and discovering the relationship between those objects and the behaviors of external factors is really important. So that's basically why predictive analytics is a better way to look at big data, because there's so many data points now that we can't simply look them in a simple spreadsheet and so forth, just like we can't do accounting on a spreadsheet. Okay, and it's growing, right? So this validates the market adoption. Zion Market Research says that this market is growing at 21%, 21%, and expected to be about almost 11 billion by 2022, just in the next couple of years. So we're right in the middle of this transformation, and many of the customers have started with something in place, or they're experimenting with it. They're doing some early adopter projects, and now they're thinking about applying that to a mass scale across the enterprise, and that's where SafePath comes in. SafePath also provides that predictive analytics by, customers like to do cloud or on-premise. That's been a debate that's still unfortunately out there, although I think it's, in my mind, it's been won, and customers are primarily looking at cloud. But for various reasons, you may want to look at on-premise, but clearly the market in the cloud is growing a lot faster. Again, a no-brainer, you would have guessed that, I'm sure. And so predictive analytics is growing faster. It can be classified into these different intelligence platforms according to this research organization, Zion Market, where I got this information from. So that's adoption, and that validates essentially the business case or business drivers that we just talked about. And so to kind of wrap it up, I mean, what are the benefits? If you were to take this to your management and say, look, we want to start Insight, where would you start? What would you benefit from? So this is some of the benefits our customers have recognized over the years. And like I said, I've got a case study to share with you in a bit as well. So basically, it makes your information and your decision making, I would say, more accurate and reliable than just looking in the rear view mirror or type scenario, where you're looking at historical data and trying to extrapolate based just on the historical data. It's important to have access to historical data, but you also should have access to other factors that influence that historical data, such as external environments and so forth. Second bullet point there is inventory example. Again, is these are just benefits examples, may not be relevant to all of you, but inventory requirements, managing shipment schedules. Basically, if you're a distributor or manufacturing company, you want to set your pricing based on past trends. At what price point people purchased or walked away. If you're trying to compete with Amazon, these are the type of things that Amazon is using. So, moving to a digital platform, you've got to have predictive analytics as well as part of that framework. The third bullet point, generate new customer responses or purchases, as well as promote cross-sell opportunities, right? So I ordered a t-shirt from Amazon, and they find something very similar. Again, that's predictive analytics, because it's assuming my behavior based on a predictive model, based on my profile and previous purchases. And then detecting various, on the risk side, criminal behavior and damage can possibly impacted because of that behavior. So it can be used by law enforcement. It can be used by government agencies to protect its citizens and its constituents. And the last point is around behavior and actions to limit fraud and cyber attacks. So some of our access management technology leverages the same insight to identify, for example, which risk is more likely to be materialized in terms of, let's say, your procure-to-pay cycle, where what's the likelihood somebody might pay a supplier just because they've had access suppliers and bank accounts, as an example. So lots of different use cases. Some of those are across the board, others are industry specific. And like I said, please reach out to us for anything specific to your industry. Okay, so if you transform, what's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, like they say. So modern analytics delivers actionable insight, and here are the results. Companies that have transformed, that's what the analysts are saying. Aberdeen did a study of companies that have made it through this insight, through the analytics transformation, and you can see 76% of analytics users can work with data as they need it. So they can go to multiple data sources, and I'll explain that in our case study a little bit more, how you can do that with SafePass. You can also create new insight, right, without the assistance of IT. Since you don't have to rely on scripts and ACL and spreadsheets, you can point and click into objects. You can pull out the elements you need, combine them in a format that you need to, and then make it automated. So click a button, make it a scheduled job that automatically runs. And you can do this all on your own as a business user without having to tie up 30–40% of the IT budget in just collecting and coalescing that data. The bottom left, 66% can connect and consolidate. So you'll see in SafePass, we provide you something called data source connections through Data Probe, which enables you to make this a repeatable process. And then finally, the bottom right, 66% also said that they can now standardize and integrate source data with analytics, right? So it's a strong business driver. These results speak for louder than anything else. So I think that's where we're excited about making a difference in customers' organization, making them successful with better insight in 2020. So how do we do that? Now let's get down to nuts and bolts a little bit, and we'll talk about a case study. So as you know, we've always, those of you that have followed us, we're about improving information risk management. There are many layers on this that we provide, to help customers become more optimized from a risk management perspective, right? And so the predictive analytics can only be achieved if you have these foundational layers in place. And so you've got to have good documentation and online for your audit and risk and compliance. So being able to query your risk and control matrix and get into the various test plans that have been executed, controls that have been put in place, risks that have been assessed, and all that. So that's the foundational layer that helps companies become move from a reactive to or informal to a more proactive and optimized stage. On top of that, we build really good access controls. You have to have identity understood really well in this day and age of cybersecurity and cyber risk. So you've got to be able to understand who's accessing what system. You can't have shared passwords, you can't have rogue accounts, and you can't have policy violations of your company policy, whether it's trade secrets, segregation of duties. And that's a layer we have been building and serving our customers for the 10 plus years in various capacities. And then on top of that, continuous monitoring. So now that we have good understanding of who's accessing what data, how's that data being used, right? So IT governance also includes continuous controls monitoring for us. And so being able to monitor, for example, somebody changed a key configuration, which now authorizes folks to pay a purchase order over a certain amount that they shouldn't be because it was whether a mistake in the technology or human mistake. Basically we want to be able to catch that and correct that before that becomes a problem. So now you can see we're building all this data in these layers and layers of our platform. And that ultimately leads to a process control. So each of your processes, whether it's a financial close process, procure to pay process, they all have controls in them. All these significant processes have controls in them. And when these processes are executed, we can actually gather evidence about the effectiveness of those controls. And also with process controls, we can prevent, if the evidence is such that our sampling shows that, that evidence is such that it creates a risk, we can prevent that process step activity from occurring right from SafePass. And so that's a fantastic way for you to apply all the data that you have gathered in the layers below that. For example, the control you define in a control matrix at the very bottom layer, the user you have defined in the second layer, and the monitoring that you've done at a third layer, and then apply all of that knowledge really prevent risk from happening based on that knowledge. And the most exciting part, of course, is what we're talking today, which is predictive analytics. So I've described what that is, but what predictive analytics then lets us do is not only stop what's happening now, but also apply the same lessons learned from your previous data to then protect you against future risks by using those patterns, hidden and obvious ones. And so that's where predictive analytics kind of builds on our platform. And so this has been a kind of a journey for 10 plus years to get to this stage which we're talking about today. And our platform contains 30 some different products we have built over that time frame that enables us to accomplish this journey, right, and make this goal possible for you. Now, you may have many of these pieces. I consider this as a Lego block. You can pick and choose which of those Lego bricks you already have, which ones you need to add, and we mix and match using Data Probe. We integrate into almost everything. We have API services now as well. So you can, of course, use your current risk control matrix, and let's say it's sitting in a Archer or metric stream or something else, and and you can hook into that. You don't have to replace everything. You can pick and choose where the pain points are. So you can be very strategic and precise. And today's focus, for example, is risk analytics, process analytics, and audit. And so some of these analytics on the top are part of Safe Insight. And you can see that once you have these layers in place, whether they're from SafePass or other sources, you can layer up your predictive analytics from SafePass, the Safe Insight, to start getting this really useful information to not only prevent risk through process pass, but also predict it with Safe Insight. So that's the most ambitious technology that we're bringing to the market and to our customers. So let's dig into Safe Insight Advanced. As I said, it's also known as Advanced Analytics. So let's take a look on what that is. So in the interest of time, I'll move a little bit quickly. You will have access to these slides through Emma. So the first thing that our advanced analytics or predictive analytics based on is really a rich rules repository. It's a metadata-driven global best practices, right? So I mentioned on the previous slide that we build it on the data, and the context was it's a single customer data. Now, since we're in the cloud and we have 200 plus customers, you can imagine that the value of that data is 200x, right? So it's much more valuable when you can use metadata to predict, for example, a close trend. How long would a certain financial services company that has presence in EMEA, Asia, and US is taking to close their books in the US, right? That's very useful information for someone in finance, for example, a CFO that's trying to benchmark against their peers. So that's where the rules repository is very useful. You can apply those rules of best practices. We provide you that as part of the predictive analytics. And that's how you can address your bottlenecks and risks in your business using the rules repository. Then data discovery, right? So as I mentioned, people waste a lot of time, billions of dollars really, on spreadsheets and looking for data sources, connecting those data sources. So data discovery as part of the advanced analytics enables you to point our tool called Data Probe, which we've talked about, at these different data sources that you see at the bottom. So whether it's the schema in your database, it's change records, it's user events, APIs, security data groups, and many other things that are the basic fundamental foundational level structures that you need to address and understand in order to build out a useful analytics based on some rules and metadata. So metadata, I'll give you an example. For example, metadata may be a supplier, but that supplier in SAP consists of like 6 different ABAP tables. In Oracle, it may consist of 9 different objects, tables within Oracle. So there are 2 different ways, but they all accomplish the same objective, which is you want to be able to make sure your supplier has the correct tax information populated and their bank accounts are not changing very frequently. And if they are, there's a good reason. So that may be your objective from advanced analytics. But to discover that data, you'll have to go hunt down hundreds of tables using scripts, and we make that possible for you to do in minutes, because all the 90% of the world's information is already mapped by SafePass. These are all the major ERP systems that customers use. So once you have discovered the data that you're interested in and let the system do that, SafePass do that, and you apply the rules from the rules catalog, or the rules repository, you're ready to analyze risks. So now you can use the capabilities within SafePath, our insight capabilities to apply different algorithms and methodologies, whether it's Benford analysis, whether it's mean analysis, some other data science or mathematical approach that you need to quantify that risk or qualify that risk to address and predict the future of that risk and come up with a treatment plan for that risk. So all the risk analysis can now be done within SafePath using Safe Insight capabilities. The bottom three are your basically optimization. So once you know the risk, you go back and optimize the process. So remember I showed you that sheet where we have risk analytics and then the ability to go from there to analyze the risk. And so that's the process optimization. And then from there, you can do better quantitative measurement. Now that you have this data about the risk around the process, and you've set optimizing goals, you've set key performance indicator for your process, for example, your customer churn ratio, your supplier shipment times, clause fluctuations on pricing, things like that, maybe your KPIs in those key processes like procure to pay, order to cash. And now you've identified those, removed the bottlenecks, and now you're measuring them. And you can also simulate future changes using this capability. So you can play with the parameters. If I changed the KPI for how many suppliers will drop off the list and what would impact that would have on my supply chain. So you can run those what if scenarios to see where can you optimize your business now, right? And that's the source of predictive analytics, leveraging the data groups you already have in your various data sources. So to take away from this, how do we turn hidden risk into opportunities? We help you discover the data without wasting the time that you saw companies are wasting looking for 5+ data sources and $60 billion in spreadsheets work. So we have saved you that effort to a large extent. Studies show 75% of that effort can be replaced or removed through these technologies. We have given you the tools to then analyze the risk, apply that to your current processes, and then optimize those processes. And once you optimize them, you can keep them optimized. So it's not a one-off, it's just part of your DNA of your business, because now you can simulate and improve this. SafePath works across multiple environments, so that's what makes it possible for us to solve this problem. And as I mentioned in previous slides, that we are out of the box support 90% of world's information systems where the critical information is stored, whether it's on premise or in the cloud. So various technology connections are available. So we covered that. And so once you have SafePath in place, what that enables you to do is look at evidence of controls. This is more of a graphical view of what I just said on a couple of slides ago. So it basically tells you how you can now go against these data sources, and in these data sources gather the control evidence, create an enterprise graph, the connections and hidden connections, and apply that to our engine, our AI-enabled engine, and then from there come up with a systematic reasoning based on the rules we just talked about, apply the algorithms required like fuzzy matching or clustering or Benford analysis, and then come up to this analytics. And that's what generates the analytics. So there's quite a bit of heavy lifting that's happening by technology, which is saving you all the time that you're doing, 30 to 40% of the time that your IT department is spending today. And so they can do more strategic work for the organization to transform to a more of a digital platform servicing the customer and employees and partners better. And ultimately, the incidents can be that are identified or cases can be identified, can be fed back into your graph, so you get smarter. This is what machine learning is all about, right? Making this whole process more learn from its incidents and get better at it. So this is where we can not only cover the input layers, but also we can identify new hidden layers through the loop back, and that's where deep learning comes from. So hidden layers can be the non-human created path. So we go start with some of those rules that we've gathered and our search engines and our heuristics have built over the experiences of our customers across the cloud, but also what you specifically bring to the table as a customer for your organization. You apply that, and that's how you discover hidden links without involving, thousands of hours of spreadsheet and cell manipulation work. And then once you have these hidden links, then you can make better decisions. It says correct decisions, but many times it's just better than what you're doing today, right? So that's what drives the business forward and improves the business ultimately by understanding and those hidden risks that are difficult to interpret with human eye. So let's take a look a quick case study that a customer of ours that I worked with for the past many years. They're a global leader in the lifestyle footwear, and they have retained us to help them improve the controls across the enterprise. We recently finished some work for them here in the U.S. In the West Coast, and they also came to one of our events and in San Francisco, and we're very, able to verify some of the results that they've produced. So basically, in a nutshell, what the company does is develops shoes, high performance shoes and footwear. It operates in 4 segments. They have domestic wholesale, international wholesale, retail, and e-commerce, which is very traditional today, or very typical today, I should say, for any retailer, right? You got to be an omni-channel company. Most of our retail organizations are like that. I picked this example because they are challenged, as most retailers are in this market, with competing with the organizations with highly digitalized platforms like Amazon. Company also operates concept stores, 122, and factory outlets, and so they have variations. And as you might imagine, the pricing and supply chain is impacted by that. So here are some of the use cases that we arrived at as part of the implementation of Safe Insight. So we picked out some of the pain points by talking to executive management and looking at some of their historical data that we had access to. So accounts payable audits, they were using third-party audit firms to do recovery audits. The supply chain is very complex, as you might imagine. Any retailer that is operating at scale today has a global supply chain. Manufacturing, in this case, also part of this organization. So while they're in retail, they also manufacture in China. So there's all kinds of subcontractor challenges, contract challenges in general, and so they wanted us to kind of look at that data and improve the relationships with their suppliers, as well as improve the ability to recover when there was dispute more accurately and timely. Second was around merchandising audits, so being able to look at pricing models, items that were in warehouses versus retail, how are they moving, and how was the impact of their promotions, media audits. It was also part of this. Freight audits. Freight's a big deal. That's any global businesses today. Freight is a much bigger factor on the financial statement than it was even 10 years ago. And then finally, compliance with their contracts with their suppliers. So those were some of the challenges the company was facing, where we created a summary of use cases. So again, it's the approach I mentioned earlier. You may have a roadmap already in place. Just let us know where we fit into that roadmap. If you want us to build one, we can help you based on best practices. So that's kind of unique to us. We're more than just a product company. We come from a consulting and professional services background. So at the end of the day, you were able to put this type of a solution together. And this is basically a sample, because I can't use actual data. So I pulled the samples together. So you can look at AP claims that are open. What's the ratio of claims by certain regions? You can see that Middle East Africa has the highest number of claims at 1.33% of their total claims. So now you can go and make control improvements in that region. Very useful information for the head of audit and finance organization, and the trends in the claim. So while we see that in Q2 they peaked in MEA, Middle East Africa region, but they have come down, and the trend is looking really good. because they've implemented SafePass inside, and now they're able to predict risk and bring it down to a lower level. So that was the kind of a dashboard or the final benefit of using SafePass. And merchandising. So now we can see how pricing is impacting our merchandise losses. So you can see where the losses are coming from on our merchandise by region in the US. You can drill down, in this case, down to the US. So we have divided US into, let's see, 6 markets. And within 6 markets, looks like South Central is pricing errors were really high in certain periods, and that's what caused our merchandise losses. So we priced the product wrong. Maybe it was the weather. Weather is a big deal for these guys and for retailers in general. So it's too hot, people aren't buying sweaters and coats, and if it's too warm, too cold, they're not buying swimsuits, right? So that's really helpful to kind of look at your merchandising strategy using the raw data you have available in your POS systems, your warehouse systems, again, multiple data sources, and being able to then come up with the best possible net price. So you're predicting, one of the examples, use case I mentioned was pricing. So you can predict what pricing will work in which market the best, and you can get to a micro pricing model around regions and seasons and so forth. So excellent way to improve inventory management and pricing, which is where your margin is and which is where your net profit comes from. And then compliance, being able to look at which of the suppliers are compliant to all the companies and scoring that instead of just looking at hundreds of attributes like shipments on time and so forth, making sure they have workman comp and contracts and pricing. You can start using credit scores from third-party agencies. You can apply compliance to your contracts, quality rates, whatever those factors are. You can start looking at vendor risk and supplier risk. You can look at freight costs over time. So again, this is one example of a customer, but there's many others that may be specific to your market that we can do similar type of analysis. So you can see the freight cost ratios here from different suppliers. And then sales by market. So this is coming from your CRM system. Also your payable system may contain media versus agencies. So you have spend through third-party agencies like this organization promotes through channels that teenagers watch for the young audience. So you have promotional sites through TV advertisements, certainly online advertising through Google and other sites, and then media companies that buy the ads for them. So you can look at agency buys versus direct buys. And in this case, you can see that around the Christmas time, the media spend went up, which is pretty typical. And then as a result of that, agency view was consistent with that. So you can see that some purchases are coming from agencies, but it's tracking pretty closely too. So if you saw a change in that, for example, agency spiked but media dropped, you might be concerned about it. Like in this case, you can see the agency's fees high, but media spend is low. So this would be maybe a point that you would want to see. Why are they not moving in the same direction? So, very helpful information. Again, this is coming from 5 or 10 different systems. You've got the merchandising system in one place. You've got POS. You've got data warehouse. You've got a warehouse system. You've got ERP system also. So you can use Data Probe, the tool we have, and scan and discover data across hundreds of systems. Many of those, like I said, the ERPs are already scoped in out of the box. And then you can, really look at where data can help you improve your business and compete better, generate better margins, and ultimately give your people a break too, so they can go home and home on time instead of sitting till midnight, burning the midnight oil, trying to get your spreadsheets right. So that's a couple of more examples, and I'm going to wrap up. So what it looks like under the covers is basically we can find duplicate invoices, for example. Prevent risk. This is just sample data, as I said before. You can find unusual changes to supplier accounts, and you can therefore use that data to predict the risk of actually materializing that event. The way it works is, I won't get into too much of a setup, but just so you know that there's product behind all this. This is the data source, as I mentioned before. This is where your data discovery comes in. So you can go in and set up your data sources. It takes a few minutes to set up. Your DBA can do that, or whoever understands that database or data source can set that up. And then once that is authorized, you'll be able to start discovering the data, connecting it through objects like these. So this is the objects, for example. I'm a finance guy, so from my perspective, it's more GL type data or purchasing supplier data. So this has now been pulled in and modified and set up. So now you don't have to worry about all those scripting and extraction, and all that will be automated. And then once the automated scheduler is running, you can get reports of snapshot of that data through the metadata that we talked about earlier. And from there, you can assign alerts and workflows to key people in the organizations. This is how you make analytics work for your organization, taking that raw data, the big data, turning into useful analytics, and then sharing it with people that have been authorized to take decisions on behalf of the company, like your finance organization on journal entries, your procurement organization on suppliers, your customer organization on credits, et cetera, et cetera. Many examples we can go through. And ultimately, it's all automated through workflows where you have complete audit trails. Your auditors are happy too, because they can see all this information and see how the company's operating the controls in real world. And many times our customers use this for SOX as well. So you can apply that to your SOX and lower the burden of SOX management. So your full incident reports, who approved what risk, and where it is in the bucket. So essentially, what we're telling you to move from a standard today's standard-based controls, which is controls that may be embedded into your processes, to a more advanced safe pass enabled approach that is based on fuzzy logic and predictive analytics, which will help you ultimately get your vision for 2020 and help you get to your goals faster and more successfully. So that's basically the end of the presentation. Emma, I think I've used up almost all the time today. Do you have any questions in the last few minutes?
Yes, hi everybody. Yes, we have had a few questions come in. First of all, how long does it take to deploy?
So that's always a good question to ask. I think it depends on scope, obviously. So we'd like to understand, what else is going on in the organization, what is your objective, and so forth. But typically, we would say don't start with a very large project. Start with maybe a CRP, a small project, to pick a few data sources, a few business problems, like we showed you here with this retailer and the footwear retailer. And they took about 6 to 8 weeks to get up and running. So that's a good, success for us, is when you can get everything from data to results and actions within 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay. Does your solution come with data protection capabilities?
Absolutely. In this day and age, we are completely SOC 1, SOC 2 certified, and we provide GDPR assurances for our customers in Europe, and certainly with CCPA here in California. So yeah, absolutely, that's one of the utmost important things for us. We actually have a data governor capability that we're announcing for Data Probe that will enable us to our customers to really mark down to the object attribute level. What is the sensitivity of data, whether it's sensitive for a specific regulations, internal, etc., and scramble that data or secure that. So that's an excellent question. We're spending a lot of time being in the data protection business, really in the safeguarding of our customers is very important to us.
Okay, and finally, what would you say are the 3 main goals you can accomplish with an analytics solution like this?
Yeah, again, there's so many that I can think of, but in the limited time we have, I would say that, start with something that really has a big value for the enterprise. So in my experience, the area that is most interesting to our customers and where we have the highest, I guess, hidden risk is in the procure to pay cycle. I gave you some examples of where this client of ours had concerns around spending and contracts and so forth. So I think that's a good place to start. You can probably come up with 3 areas within your procure to pay cycle. If you had any kind of major finding on the record to report cycle, if there's just bottlenecks in your financial reporting that's impacting decision making, that's another really important area. if you are changing your customer service model. And so that's a third area I would say. So it just depends what's happening in your enterprise. Again, business models are very so different, but those are three obvious areas that I would start with and then drill into details. Thank you, Emma. That's, I think, all the time we have today, right?
Yes, yes. We've come to the end of the session, so I just want to thank you all for joining today. And if you would like a further discussion around Safe Insight or any of our other solutions, then you can contact me, Emma, here at SafePAS, and you can follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter and read about all our updates and keep up to date with our latest happenings and obviously our educational content that's out there. So yeah, I think that's all. So we hope to see you all again next month, if not in Colorado at the Rocky Mountain Oracle User Group, then at our next webinar. Thank you
Okay.
and goodbye.